Alright, so what should you do to deal with anger now that you know that venting or blowing off steam is bad for you? Now, to do it successfully, you gotta know that that anger is coming from 3 places. First, the provocation, the thing that made you mad. Second, your mood at the time of that provocation. You stressed, hungry, tired? All those things make that anger worse. Third, your thoughts about the provocation. You blaming, labeling, catastrophizing, all those things are likely making your anger worse. So why do you need to know that? Because you can intervene in each of those places. And in this series, I'm going to tell you how. Alright, so one of the reasons you're getting mad is because you're being provoked. And there are 3 ways to deal with those provocations. Here is one of them. Avoid them. I know that sounds obvious, but I bet you are selecting into unnecessary provocations. There are times in your life where you are choosing to be provoked, and you don't have to. You don't have to read your politically opposite cousin's Facebook posts. You don't have to watch sports where your team keeps letting you down. You might even be able to find different routes to work to avoid traffic. Now, some people are going to say, well, that's not very good. You shouldn't avoid things just because they make you angry. Why? Why do we have to suffer unnecessary provocations? I stopped seeing some scary movies because I didn't like the way they made me feel. I'm not saying avoid everything. I'm saying find ways to opt out the stuff that makes you angry that you don't need. Okay, so some provocations you can't avoid, but maybe you can prepare for them. If you know that you're about to encounter something that will likely lead to anger, take some time to prep for it. Maybe it's a gathering with some family you don't get along with. Maybe you're doing a shift with a coworker that you don't get along with. Maybe it's traffic. Spend some time anticipating it and thinking about how you'll deal with it. Come up with an approach to how you're going to handle the asinine thing your cousin says to you. What are you going to say to yourself when the traffic slows you down and you're sitting in that hot, hot sun? If you know it's going to happen, be ready. Alright, so some provocations you can't avoid, and you want to do more than just prepare for them in your mind. You can actually take steps to change them. We sometimes refer to this as active coping. Here's an example. You feel obligated to go to a party at someone's house that you don't actually care for. Maybe it's a work thing, maybe it's family, who knows? Couple ways you can change that situation. 1, bring a friend. This may sound obvious, but you've essentially changed the nature of the provocation to make it more pleasant for you. Or maybe there's a particular thing you don't like about spending time with this person. Address it in advance. Maybe they always want to talk about politics and you don't like it. So tell them in advance that you don't want to. Tell them they're welcome to if they want, but that you're going to disengage from those conversations. They'll be less likely to bring it up and you've changed the situation. Alright, so sometimes when you get mad, it has very little to do with the actual provocation. And it has way more to do with the mood you're in at the time of the provocation. Tired, hungry, stressed. Here are 2 things you can do about it. The first one's obvious. When you can, prevent getting into those moods. Healthy sleep, eat right, manage your stress. Now that's obviously not always possible, so here's another thing you can do about it. Acknowledge it. Things feel worse right now because I'm tired. I'm stressed, and it's making me more likely to snap. Just saying that to yourself helps you recognize something really important. That the provocation isn't fully responsible for your anger. Alright, so one of the reasons you're getting angry isn't the provocation, and it isn't your mood. It's how you're thinking about that provocation. Because when things happen around us, we interpret them. We decide what they mean to us. We decide who's responsible, and we decide how bad they are. Now, there are a billion different types of angry thoughts, but I've broken them down into 3 categories. All or nothing thinking, labeling, catastrophizing. And I'm going to tell you about each of those in the next 3 videos. So here's how putting things into broad categories tends to make you mad. So you're running late for work and you get stopped at a stoplight and you say to yourself, God, this happens to me every single day. Or maybe you get home and your roommate hasn't done the dishes the way they said. God, she's always doing this. Now, when you use words like every and always, you're taking a single event and you're turning it into a pattern. You're no longer mad about this stoplight, you're mad about all stoplights. It's not just this time that your roommate didn't do the dishes, you're mad about every time they didn't do the dishes. Now, maybe there really is a pattern there that you want to address, but there's still a big difference between she does this all the time and she does this more than I would like. Alright, so one of the reasons you might be getting angry is because you tend to label people. So maybe you're waiting in line somewhere and somebody cuts in front of you, and you say to yourself, what an inconsiderate asshole. Now, maybe they are, or maybe they just did an inconsiderate thing. Maybe they are regularly very nice, but the circumstances just got the best of them. Or maybe it was just an accident. Or maybe they're an asshole, but the point is once you give them that label, you are now responding to them as that thing. They are no longer a human being with nuanced motivations. In your mind, they are that thing you labeled them as. Alright, so what is catastrophizing? And why is it the worst thing you can ever do? So catastrophizing is when you blow things way out of proportion. This thing that happened, it's gonna ruin my day, my week, my career, my entire life. Now, are there catastrophes? Yes. And when they happen, we should react accordingly. But a lot of times, they're not catastrophes. They're minor inconveniences. And we blow them way out of proportion in our minds, And we react with much greater anger because of it. Paying attention to your angry thoughts is a good way to deal with maladaptive anger. I talked about labeling, all or nothing thinking, and catastrophizing. Now, a lot of people call those cognitive distortions or irrational beliefs, but I don't love those names. Because sometimes these aren't distortions or irrational at all. There are assholes in the world and there are catastrophes. And recognizing that is not a problem. The problem is when our thoughts are not accurate representations of what's really going on. What I'm really encouraging is realistic and accurate thinking. If you find yourself catastrophizing, ask yourself, how bad is this really? You might find that it's an actual crisis, in which case, be angry. You might find that the person you're dealing with is an actual asshole, in which case, be angry. Being mad doesn't mean our thoughts are wrong. Alright, so far I've been talking about preventing anger by paying attention to your mood, the provocation, and your thoughts. But that doesn't always work because sometimes we're mad and we want to feel less mad. So here are a few things you can do in the moment. Number 1, grounding. Right now, take a moment and think about 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Now, when you are so angry you think you might lose control, get in the habit of doing those 5 things. And it works for anxiety too. Alright, here's why problem solving is a good way to channel that unwanted anger. One of the reasons you get angry is because something in your life isn't the way you want it to be. Now, that might be a big thing, like I don't have the job I want, or it could be a small thing, like my kids never replaced the toilet paper, which, by the way, they do not. Now, another way of saying that something in your life isn't the way you want it to be is to say that it's a problem. And a way of dealing with a problem is to solve it. Now, if it's a small thing, solving it should be relatively easy. If it's a big thing, it's going to take some work. And that might mean putting a bunch of steps in place to get there. But here's the thing. Doing that, getting the ball rolling, it's going to feel empowering. And that alone might help decrease some of that unwanted anger. Alright, so you probably know that one of the ways to deal with anger in the moment is through deep breathing. The angry response is associated with the sympathetic nervous system or the fight or flight system kicking in, and one way to decrease that activation is through deep breathing. But not everyone knows the best ways to do it. Here are 3 options. We're going to start with simple deep breathing, long, slow inhale through the nose, long, slow exhale through the mouth. Next is triangle. You breathe in for 3 seconds, you hold for 3 seconds, and you breathe out for 3 seconds. Finally, similar to that is box breathing. In for 3, hold for 3, out for 3, hold empty for 3. Repeat these as necessary, find the one that works for you. When we talk about anger management, we spend too much time talking about how to decrease that anger, and not enough time talking about how to channel it into productive things. Our anger exists in us because it energized our ancestors to confront injustice. So let's use it to confront injustice. We are angry because we don't like the way something is in the world. As quickly as you can, figure out what that something is, and then use the energy that anger gave you to fix it. So one of the ways we can deal with anger is through an assertive but not aggressive conversation. What's the difference? Well, with aggression, there's an intent to harm. Assertiveness is about respect. Respect for your own rights as well as respect for theirs. So how do you do it? Here are 3 things to keep in mind. 1, use I statements. There's a difference between I disagree and you're wrong. 2, rehearse. Think about the main points you want to get across and practice what you want to say. 3, think about your body language. Are you scowling? Are you crossing your arms? Because what we do with our body matters too. You can rehearse that too. So when you're angry, it usually means that there's a problem in your life. Something in your life isn't the way you want it to be. Try to figure out what that something is and direct your anger toward a solution.